We come to the account of Jesus' resurrection, and this has caused much controversy over the centuries. The question must be asked, if Jesus was not resurrected, as the Bible clearly tells us that he was, then what happened to the body? We must begin this morning by considering some other reasons that have been given to the missing body of Jesus from the tomb. The first reason given is this: that the disciples themselves stole the body to fake a resurrection and continue their movement. There are many things that are against anything like this happening. Firstly, there were guards outside the tomb, as we can see in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 27, and verses 62 to 66. Now, the next day that followed the day of the preparation, the chief priests and Pharisees came together unto Pilate, saying, "Sir, we remember that deceiver," that is referring to Jesus, said, "While he was yet alive, after 3 days I will rise again. Command therefore that the sepulchre be made sure until the 3rd day, lest his disciples come by night and steal him away, and say unto the people, he is risen from the dead. So the last error shall be worse than the first." Pilate said unto them, "Ye have a watch. Go your way, make it as sure as ye can." So they went and made the sepulchre sure, sealing the stone and setting a watch. Well, it's clear that these Jewish religious leaders were the ones who put this first concern forward. The punishment for a Roman soldier who had failed in their guard under Roman military law was typically death. And this was particularly the case if the prisoner was considered high profile, as Jesus was. The fact that there were guards and the guards would have been put to death if the disciples had taken the body shows this first hypothetical theory is a non-starter. Furthermore, the stone was sealed. The stone had been placed in front of the entrance to the tomb, and rope and wax then sealed the stone into place, confirming that Jesus had died. We can also say that beyond Jesus' death and resurrection, many of the disciples ended up losing their own lives for the cause of Christ. I don't know about you, but I certainly would not be willing to lose my life for something that I knew to be a lie. We can see in 1 Corinthians chapter 15 and verses 5 to 8 that Jesus' resurrection was actually witnessed by more than just the immediate disciples. And he, that is Jesus, was seen of Cephas, or Peter, then of the 12. After that, he was seen by above 500 brethren at once, of whom the greater part remain unto this present, but some are fallen asleep. After that, he was seen of James, then of all the apostles. And last of all, he was seen of me also, as of one born out of due time. In other words, if you can't believe the account of the disciples or even me, the Apostle Paul, then there are a number of those more than 500 eyewitnesses to Jesus' resurrection, many of whom are still alive. You can go and ask them. The second argument against Jesus' resurrection is that either the Roman authorities or the Jewish authorities moved the body and placed it in a common grave to prevent the tomb from becoming a shrine or to avoid any civil disorder. This happened, according to this theory, sometime prior to Jesus' resurrection. It is clear that this is a false argument. Had this been the case, the Roman authorities or the Jewish authorities could have easily produced the dead body of Jesus and quelled any talk of the resurrection, but neither did because they could not. Thirdly, there is an argument that the grave or tomb was the victim of a grave robbery. But again, we just have to consider that the tomb was sealed, guarded by Roman guards. It would have been impossible for robbers to get into the tomb, let alone past the guards whose lives depended on the body remaining there. Fourthly, there is a theory known as the swoon theory. in which they argue that Jesus did not actually die on the cross, but instead he just appeared to have died. They then argue that the resurrection is not possible because Jesus never actually died. There are many clear arguments against this, one being that the Romans were experts in crucifixion. The injuries to Jesus were so significant that they would have led to his death. As a scientific fact, we can read the Gospel according to John, chapter 19 and verses 33 and 34 with these words. But when they, that is the Roman soldiers, came to Jesus and saw that he was dead already, they brake not his legs. But one of the soldiers with a spear pierced his side, and forthwith came there out blood and water. The collection of blood and water would show that he had died. The water was likely pericardial fluid, which built up around the heart. The blood confirms that the heart had stopped. In addition, we can say that Jesus' injuries were so severe that had he survived, which he had not, he would not have had the strength to push away the sealed stone that was also guarded by Roman soldiers. The final argument against Jesus' true resurrection is that the women who first discovered the empty tomb may have gone to the wrong location. And the argument is that this was an honest mistake. But for many of the arguments that we have already covered, namely that it would be easy for the Romans and the Jewish authorities to point them in the direction of the correct tomb and end any talk of a resurrection, yet this did not happen. In other words, all five arguments put forward for Jesus having not resurrected from the dead are completely flawed and should be seen as such. The only logical answer, as mind-blowing as it is from an earthly perspective, to consider that Jesus rose from the dead as he said he would. Mark chapter 9 and verse 31 shows Jesus clearly predicting and prophesying what would happen. For he, that is Jesus, taught his disciples and said unto them, the Son of Man is delivered into the hands of men, and they shall kill him, and after that he is killed, he shall rise the third day.